Assalamu alaikum and welcome to a panel discussion on the rise of Islamophobia in India. As we know, India is one of the largest constituents with Muslim population. It has something like 200 million Muslims and constitutes 15% of the population. Muslims have had some sort of problems throughout its inception of the Indian state. However, since the coming of the BJP into power, the situation have gone really worse. To discuss the plight of the Muslims in India, I have three guests today. At the moment, I've only got two in line, and hopefully I'll have the third one joining me soon. I have got from United States of America, Sunita Viswanath, who is a lifelong campaigner, a human rights campaigner for different issues from Afghanistan, Pakistan, to throughout the globe, in particularly concerning women. But recently, she is a co-founder of the Hindu Human Rights Organization. So thank you very much for joining us, Sunita. My second guest is from Kerala. Her name is Aisha Renan. She came to fore at the instigations, or rather the demonstrations against the CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Act, and she was in the forefront for the student movement. And she'll be joining us from Kerala. And our third speaker is Aditya Menon. He's from Delhi. He's a political journalist, and he's been able to explore and expand on issues of Indian Muslims. And he has been brave enough to do this in a situation where the plight of the Muslims is really getting worse. And also mentioning that is a danger to person's life. So thank you very much, all three of you, and welcome to this discussion panel. And to start off with, I think we'd like to bring in Sunita first and maybe explain to us what is the difference between Hinduism and the rise we are seeing of the nationalism itself, which is known as Hindutva.
Thank you so much, Isnab. I'm really honored to be with all of you. And having grown up in the UK, it's particularly lovely to be speaking to Brits, to my British brothers and sisters. I'm born into the Hindu faith, into a Hindu family. And the Hinduism that I was raised with, and I was raised in a very practicing Hindu family, the tenets of that faith are basically that we are all one, and that nonviolence or ahimsa is one of the highest ideals of Hinduism and other religions like Buddhism, Jainism, and so forth. And that my job as a Hindu is to figure out what my calling on this earth is and to do it. Basically, the idea of dharma, what is the right thing for you to do in your life or any given situation, and without any hesitation, without any calculation, without any sense of, if I do this, what reward will I get? Will I get more of a reward if I do this thing? Without those kinds of thoughts, you just do what you're supposed to do. And that's how I've, in a very simple way, understood my religion. And for many years before I got involved as a Hindu identified activist, I was very upset that the only Hinduism that was being spoken publicly was a Hinduism that really I could not recognize in light of what I was taught as my faith. What you're calling Hindutva, Hindu nationalism, or Hindu extremism. And so it took some time, because I'm not an expert, I'm not a religious scholar. It took I'm just a person who cares most of all about justice for all. So I've been on this very difficult path of speaking up as a Hindu against Hindutva. So Hinduism, in my opinion, and I state very clearly, Hinduism is not Hindutva. Hindutva is exclusivist. It says Hindus are the best. Hindutva is Islamophobic. Hindutva, in practice, discriminates explicitly against Muslims. And Hinduism teaches, as I said, that we are all one. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, in our oldest scripture, Rig Ved, says the world is one sacred family. Hindus believe that God, or the divine, resides equally and identically in a Hindu and a Muslim, in a Hindu and a Dalit, in any of us, regardless of whatever our identity or sexual orientation, or it goes even beyond. The divine resides in every atom, every particle of the universe. So
Thank you very much for that. A very concise presentation. The most important point for us here is the fact that not all Hindus are related to Hindutva, political ideology. and therefore we should not conflate the two. That's a clear distinction. But to bring in Aditya, now what is the link between Hindutva and the BJP? How do we link the political ideology of this concept called Hindutva with the BJP? And of course, Prime Minister Modi is the member who belongs to that party. Aditya, I think you muted. Sunita, would you like to come in while he corrects himself on that?
Yes, absolutely. Just to continue, that this Hindutva that we are seeing in action in full force is not just violent and goes against ahimsa, it's paramilitaristic. It's incredibly scary. And the last very important point about Hindutva is that it is a hyper-masculine political ideology. Whereas in Hinduism, one of the core teachings is that there is no female divine without male divine and vice versa. No Shiva without Shakti. So these gods of the Hindutva brigade, it's Ram without Sita. It's an incomplete and mutilated Hinduism.
Okay. Aisha, I would like to bring you in here. Maybe give us a link for the average person in Britain to understand how Hindutva has become linked to the BJP.
I'm audible, right?
Yeah.
First of all, it's my pleasure to be a part of the discussion. Coming back to what Ismail Bhai was talking about, Hindutva ideology, which the BJP government or the Sangh Parivar government is putting up, or they have been trying to implement in all these time, is that they want a majoritarian politics or a majoritarian country in which their community is most dominant and in which their community is placed in every place. At the same time, they wanted other minorities, which include Muslims as well as Dalits and all other minority communities, to be under them. So I think it's as a part of that particular ideology, they started to inject the Islamophobia among the people in our country. I would like to quote Savarkar. In 1939 itself, he has told that if we Hindus in India grow stronger, in time this Muslim friends of the League type will have to play the part of German Jew instead. It is this Savarkar who has, the basic, which was considered to be the basic person, or from his ideology, the RSS as a group formed and which later became the BJP or the Bharatiya Janata Party, which nowadays which is ruling our country. So Islamophobia, from that very term itself, is it defines like a sort of fear towards the community. But at the same time, the Islamophobia that is prevailing or that is seen in India is something hatred. Apart from the fear or that kind of thing, the Islamophobia that's seen nowadays is a hatred towards the community, hatred towards the Muslims who are living in all over the India. So and another thing which I wanted to put that basically I'm coming from the Kerala. So whenever I told people like I'm from Kerala, they always told me like, oh, you are in the safer part while compared to, because everyone openly says that Islamophobia in Kerala is very less while compared to that of other parts of our country. But I would like to point out one very recent incident in which in certain hotels in the capital city, they have published or they put up a board which says that no halal food. It's like they will sell non-halal food hereafter. Basically, in our area, halal food is considered to be that is very eatable to the Muslims, and it's something so much associated with a Muslim culture and their thing. So when they have put up this particular board of they will sell non-halal food, it means or it clearly shows their hatred towards that particular culture, that particular community, and everything. So being so before I have only moved to the Delhi in past 2 years. So before coming into the Delhi, this particular elements of the Islamophobia or this particular attack on the community, that were very new to me. So I was exposed to that world, and a bill was bill was came, and anti-CAA bill became an act, and the protest and all the sort of things. Since that, I talked with many people around. I talked with many persons in person. So everywhere I can see that the BJP government is trying to inject this Islamophobic feeling to each and everyone in the country, especially the Hindus, so that they can. It's very. They are the community is very accessible to them. So that is why they are trying to come into the power, and that is true. They are, keeping their power alive.
Thanks for that. You touched on something very important here. As I mentioned at the beginning, that of course within any country there's always problems between communities, and India was no exception. But what has happened now, it appears that Islamophobia is becoming institutionalized at the government level. Aditya, I don't know whether you're online now, whether we can bring you on to see how the institutionalized legislations have become Islamophobic that's impacting Muslims most. I think, Sunita, maybe you can come in and then we'll bring in Aisha.
Yes, the cultural expression of Islamophobia I've been seeing myself. It's been 10 years now that I've been doing my work as somebody openly identifying as a Hindu person working on human rights. So I'm in many Hindu spaces, temple spaces, listservs, my own extended family, and Islamophobia is expressed quite openly, and it's very, very upsetting. It's what made me start doing this work. But in terms of legislatively and in terms of just, government policy in India, I guess it started with the more than 150 lynchings of mostly Muslims, also some Dalits, in India since the first time the Modi government was elected. And the first one that my organizations, I spoke out on was the one of this man, Mohammed Akhlaq, that got the world's attention.
Just give us a brief description of that, please.
Yes, it was a man who was accused of eating beef, basically. And there was a temple in Anand Patwardhan's new documentary, Vivek. You can actually meet the people, the family and the community of this place, Dadri. And the family is a Muslim family living there with very friendly Hindu neighbors. And in the temple, a call was given by the priest to say there's a suspicion that this family has beef. And basically the call was given for a mob to go. And so this mob of youth went and lynched this man and beat up other family members. And this is very widely reported in the news. And this was one of those things I will never forget.
What happened to the perpetrators?
I believe they were, do you know, Aisha? I believe they were arrested. I don't know if they remained in jail.
No, they were released very recently.
That's usually the case. They are usually released.
I want to talk
Unlike the people who are in jail because they spoke up, those people who are in jail because they were part of anti-CAA protests and any kind of dissent, or arrested just because they are Muslim, those people don't get released, unfortunately.
Of course, I want to talk about these two legislations that we've touched on, CAA and NRC. Aisha, you want to expand on them and what they are for our viewers? What do they mean?
Yes. So the CAA is the Citizenship Amendment Act, which was passed 1 year before in the legislature, which was passed in the both Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, and which became a law. It is the amendment of the Citizenship Amendment Act of 1955. So when the act was amended, so one of the basic thing which the BJP government is doing is they are finding the loopholes in the constitution, and they are infiltrating through that, and they are trying to propagate their ideology. So they are trying to prevail their ideologies through all that loopholes in the constitution. So in the case of the Citizenship Amendment Act, according to the act, it clearly says that majority community or the minorities from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh will not be given the citizenship in India. It clearly says that the majorities that is in the Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan are Muslims, and the minorities are Hindus. They haven't included other areas like Sri Lanka, Nepal, and all that area very cunningly, because the minorities in that areas are Muslims. So it is clearly like they wanted to make a distinction was between giving the citizenship to the Muslims and that of Hindus. So it clearly says that they don't want that Muslims to be the citizens of India. So the NRC is something that was mainly associated with the Assam. It is implementing. So the detention centers and detention camps are making. It
Can
is
we
mean
just go one
they are.
step behind? Sorry, Aisha, we've gone a bit too fast. What is the link between CAA and NRC?
There is NPR, National Population Register. The next step is NRC, National.
Register
I just forgot. And then yes, and another step is the CAA, Citizenship Amendment Act. So right now they are telling that the NRC will be only implemented in Assam, but actually they are planning to implement it through every borough of the India. So according to that NRC things, they will be only giving citizenship to the Hindu communities. They will be clearly excluding Muslims of that area, and that Muslims will be sent to the detention centers. I think Aditya Menon can talk more about that particular kind of thing, because it has already, there are detention centers set up in the various parts of the Assam, and already there are a number of people who are excluded from the register, and they have been sent to the detention centers.
Thank you. Before Aditya, I hope you can hear us now, and we got you back online. Really nice to hear your voice and your views more than that. Maybe you can explain to us the way we understand it, or the way I understand it is NRC is a means and a mechanism where individuals have to prove their right to be Indian citizens. And failure to do that, they're likely to be put, they cannot vote, they're likely to be expelled or put in detention centers. Am I right in that? And maybe you'd like to expand on that? Aditya, can you come back?
Thank you. Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes.
Oh,
yes, you are.
Thank God. Okay, so extremely sorry for the technical trouble, first of all, and thank you for calling me here. So, I mean, I'll just start off straight away from where Aisha left regarding the NRC, the National Register for Citizens. It was the idea of NRC came about in a very specific context of Assam, where a very large number of settlers, Hindu as well as Muslim, from East Pakistan, which is also now Bangladesh, had come and settled there after the 1971 war. 1971, the conflict created a very big refugee crisis in India, and a large number of people who were fleeing persecution from East Bengal had come and settled in Assam. So, and many of them became part of the society and economy in that part of India, and some of them even went back to their original homes. So NRC was brought to deal with that aspect of settlers who had come and settled there. It was part of, there was a
I'm afraid we have a very, very poor line.
Nativist movies led to surgery. Yeah. So there was a ethnic nationalist movement in Assam in the 1980s, which eventually gave rise to an insurgency in Assam. And as part of the peace process, an agreement was signed between the insurgents.
Aditya, I think we are very, very poor. Maybe we give you a call and bring you back again.
Ismail Bhai, can we have him audio only? Would that be better?
Quite possible. We can try you on audio. I think basically what we have here is the NRC rule was to find out who can be rightfully claimed to be an Indian citizen. And what has happened here, and maybe Sunita and Aisha can come into this, is the fact that Indian Muslims have a higher threshold to reach before they can prove their Indian citizenship. And this is where we're now talking about the camps. Am I right in that?
Well, this is how I understand it simply. This NRC is like a kind of a census. And the idea would be that everybody, and usually a citizen doesn't have to prove they're a citizen. It's the other way around. But nevertheless, everybody in India will have to go and produce all the documents, which is hard because in the most educated and rich families, there will be people without these documents. So it's hard. And it's hard for women who get married and maybe have a different name. All of these discrepancies will have to be dealt with. And so, but then that's the thing, everybody will have to produce all these documents. And that, the genius of it is that the CAA, which is this other very, very clever thing that they did, is the CAA is this act that says that from all of these neighboring countries, as Aisha said, which have these Muslim majorities, the people from there, it's an act of great magnanimity to say that refugees from those places can come. But what it will end up being is a shortcut, a fast track. When you don't have your documents, and remember, the CAA excludes Muslims. So when you don't have the documents, everybody who's not a Muslim will have that fast track, but Muslims won't have it. That's the crux, I think.
Okay, I think we have a very similar situation to a lot of our listeners. They'll sort of understand in relation to Windrush scandal in Britain, where a lot of West Indian citizens came and worked in Britain for over 50 years. But in the failure to provide document, they're now being deported out of Britain. And there's a big scandal. So I think we're having something very similar. Now, the issue of camps, of course, I've heard Modi himself deny that there's no such thing as camp in India. So what are these camps and what evidence have we got that there are camps do actually exist in India? Maybe Aisha, maybe you can start us off.
Yeah, right now they have already built a number of detention centers and number of people are already in the detention centers. But what they are telling is like there is no detention centers, we don't have any plan for that. But all these things are actually happening in the background. I think Al Jazeera has did a story regarding the detention centers that are built and that are happening in India itself.
Very good. Aditya, can you want to come back on detention centers? We'll try you one more time.
Yeah, the detention center.
I'm afraid
there very much there in Assam. They have already been constructed. There are people who.
Aditya, I'm sorry, we're going to have to let you go because your
there are
voice
people
is not
who
coming through at all. I think we've got a very poor line with you. Sunita, you want to add on that?
Our colleague, the amazing activist Tista Sitalvad, who's been, attacked and just harassed from 2002 when some of her most brave work began in the aftermath of the Gujarat carnage. She is the one who I know who's been doing the most incredible work in Assam. And there's a lot of documentary footage of these huge detention centers that have really awful conditions and do have many people languishing there. And so we can easily, and there have been articles in the New York Times, BBC documentary footage that I've seen. Anybody who says that they don't exist has to contend with the press and the documentary footage that the world has seen.
Thank you for that. Well, now we've discussed so far the difference between Hinduism and Hindutva. We've also discussed the institutionalization of Islamophobia. I want to bring down at a more local level. Obviously, Islamophobia is not just reserved to the Hindutva itself. It is now become quite widespread because of several reasons. One of is the spreading of its ideology itself from the government. How is that impacting on the day-to-day life of Muslims in India? Aisha, you might want to touch on that, and maybe we'll bring in Sunita again.
Yes, the Islamophobia or the problems that the Muslims right now facing due to this issue of the Islamophobia is its magnitude is very great or very high. There are, I would like to bring about the Northeast Delhi pogrom that happened in the last February 24th into this. In that place, it was a place where the Muslims and Hindus lived equally. It was not something like a Muslim majority area or something. But the thing that happened there, I have personally visited that place and I have seen it's like it's a gully. You can understand that gully like opposite houses will be there in which Muslims and Hindus are living. On that particular area, only the Muslim houses are being attacked. Only the Muslims houses are being burned. When we are taking the case of the shop also, it's like I think you might have been seen in which two shops are burned, in between one shop is unburned. That shop belongs to an Hindu. So that is how severely or seriously this particular kind of Islamophobia that is working. And also each and every day Muslims are attacked, Muslims are lynched, Muslims are subjected to the death only because of the particular religion they are believed into, only because of particular ideologies which they are into. Like in Delhi and all, people always used to tell me like you shouldn't go with this particular scarf to the particular areas of the Delhi, because it is that much severe that the Islamophobia and hatred towards that particular religious is seen in the different part of every day or every month. It's like Sunita ma'am has pointed out the case of the Akhlaq. But nowadays, the Muslim lynching of the Muslims or attack on the Muslims have become, it's like a normalized one. People no more talks about that because every day it is happening. In each and every corner of the country, it is happening. Very recently, one man was attacked mainly because that he was accused of carrying the beef, and also there were these people who were attacked mainly because they hold the name of Muslim. When the Northeast Delhi program happened, we have seen many footages in which like Muslims were, it's like they were asking, are you a Muslim? Then he will be attacked. And also they will be asked to chant the slogan of Jai Sri Ram. If someone is saying is not ready to chant the slogan of Jai Sri Ram, the very next moment he will be attacking. So that is particular kind of the situation that is prevailing right now in India. And also, I would like to point out one of the problems which was happening between. There is a group in between. So. I would say that the liberals in India, they always shows a particular kind of try to normalize the things that happening in between. Everywhere or each and every place, every Muslims asserting their identity is not welcome. At the same time, Muslim asserting their religious identity is not welcome. At the same time, Muslims are saying like I am Indian. So it's like in each and even in the 1947. At the time of the partition, all the Muslims that are living in India right now, they have choose to live in India. So they have proved their patriotism or their love towards the country on that day itself. At the same time, nowadays also each and everyone is told to prove their patriotism. If I had a similar kind of, or I had a similar sort of experiences. There is the binary between this good Muslim and bad Muslim in India. Good Muslim is someone who doesn't question the authority, someone who keeps silent after seeing all the things that happening around. And the bad Muslim is someone who questions against it. And I should say that I proudly come under this bad Muslim category. So always they tell this. Them or they tell us to prove our patriotism towards our country, prove our how much love that we have towards our country. So all these things are coming out of that Islamophobia that is seen in everywhere. The problem what happens in India is the government itself is safeguarding the people, those who are instigating the violence, mainly based on it. It's like if someone in India, the things have become like if someone is attacked one Muslim because of that, out of Islamophobia, he will be get rewarded, or he will be
Normally,
getting higher positions in.
Sorry to interrupt, Aisha, but normally in a democracy, there's a clear distinction between the government and the legislature, and especially the judiciary, the courts and the police. In India, are you trying to tell me that somehow there is a blurring of the line between the
yes,
police?
very much. Not only between the police, even with the court. Like you might have seen the recent Babri verdict. In that verdict, the judiciary have clearly said that there was no evidence of a temple under that. There was only an evidence of structure under the masjid. But still, they have verdicted according to that. According to other people, and they have given them that permission to demolish whole the masjid itself. So even in the case of, even we are taking in the case of the Northeast Delhi violence, I would like to, because it's very recent incident, so you can hear that it was clear with the videos and clear with the footages that it was the BJP people who instigated the violence. It was them who actually told that literally a BJP leader told in front of the police itself that if the the protest sites are not cleared in 3 days, they are going to attack. And there is a clear evidence of the video footages of that particular man telling that, and they are instigating the violence in the whole area. But what was the same thing which we have seen? The people who were associated with the anti-CAA protests, the activists, students, and everyone who were associated with the anti-CAA protests were arrested, telling that they are the people who have conspired the Northeast Delhi violence. So it's like very clearly evident for them, but still they are, showing a kind of blind eye towards all that things. Instead, they are arresting the people in this side. From Sherji Imam to Umar Khalid, it's a huge number of the list of the people, but there was no any single number of the people who have actually instigated. It's like, it's very clear to the people who are the persons behind it, but at the same time the judiciary, the police, everyone are standing along with them, and they are arresting the wrong people.
Okay, you've touched quite heavily on sort of physical impact, the lynching, the burning, the mob attacks, physical attacks. What about on a more pervasive level, on something that impacts more on the long-term process, like admissions to universities, getting jobs, becoming in a political party? How is those kind of things impacting? Maybe Sunita, you might want to start off if you have any knowledge of that.
Well, I wanted to speak more about the previous point.
Sure, carry on.
One of the members of my organization was in Delhi during the February violence that happened, and he was part of a group that was helping do it. This particular person was manning a hotline, and he actually heard on the hotline some of the families that called, and the phone rang off the hook. Many of the families that called, while they were telling him, because he was the person on the phone, how terrified they were, the exact location of where they were, the help that they needed, he could actually hear the chanting of Jai Shri Ram. It was the most, this was traumatizing for my colleague and for us, and complete proof that of what was exactly what Aisha was talking about. And I don't know about college admissions. Aisha would have to talk about that, but I just want to corroborate that we work so closely with so many activists in India, anti-CAA activists who are Muslim, who are not Muslim, people who are daring to speak out. And it's done, my awe of people like Aisha and so many others for whom, I can sit in America and say whatever I want, and touch wood, it's still a country where I won't be put in jail for speaking. Not yet anyway. And hopefully with this new administration, we're on a better track right now in this country. But Aisha, I visited students from your university 5 days after the police went in and attacked Jamia students, specifically because of the protests they were doing against the CAA. And I know I've met them 5 days after with my group, and just hats off to you, and please take care of yourself and stay safe. You're precious for our work.
On that, let's expand a little bit. So say students who have been involved in activism, or even generally Muslim students, are their progression impeded because of that? Do they find it difficult to find jobs in civil service or even the army or any other sectors within India?
Yes, everywhere a Muslim with a Muslim name is always, subjugated to different layers of barriers in front of him, even in the institutions, even in the campuses, and everywhere. So the one of the things which I think the BJP government, their rule, everything is well planned. So one of the things which they have did is that they have appointed their people in everywhere, in each and every nook and corner of each and every institutions in the head. Even talking about our institution, it's so sad for us to say that we often that all the sort of the things which our VC takes, or all the sort of the decision which our VC takes, we often doubts that issue one among the BJP people. So it's like everywhere they have made their people, and they are trying to do whatever they wanted according to them. One of the main issue that right now we the students are facing is that campuses are not reopening at this moment. So actually we often fear that the farmers protest is happening in the capital, so they are using this corona as an excuse for not opening the campuses, because they fear that once the campuses are open, the protests are going to enlighten, going to spark in the capital. The farmers protest is going to be a massive one, as like once we have seen in the case of CAA. So right now they are not opening the institutions and campuses on the name of or putting up the corona as just an excuse.
Fine. You touched on something very important there. Obviously, that the BJP has managed to infiltrate many structures within India. And of course, they have the majority and they can recruit more people, especially being a government in power. What I want to know is whether there is a counter narrative to that, whether the left, the Muslims, the Sikh community, the Dalits you mentioned earlier, are they also trying to come together, or are they working very independently of each other to counter what is being happening to the Muslims in particular, and in generally the authoritarianism of BJP?
From where I stand, I see an incredible solidarity of impacted communities. This anti-CAA protests were they were everywhere. Shaheen Bagh was everywhere. I was in India, and there was a massive protest, absolutely to every.
Shaheen Bagh, sorry, a lot of listeners.
Shaheen Bagh is a part of Delhi where a protest of CAA was, and maybe you were there then, Aisha, you can say as well, but it was basically a Muslim woman-led protest that lasted months, and it was one of the most inspirational moments in this protest movement, and it was one of the moments where people who have been up in arms and in dissent about the direction India is going in got some hope after so many years of the Modi regime. It would have been probably still going on if coronavirus hadn't come. It was such a incredible, sustained, day in, day out, multi-generational protest, and it was led by Muslim women, and people from every other community were there in that area of Shaheen Bagh, including Hindus. And Aisha, you must have been there, so do you want to talk about Shaheen Bagh?
Yes, talking about Shaheen Bagh, actually the police brutality happened in Al-Aqsa Muslim University and Jamia on the day of December 15th. Yes. So Shaheen Bagh is an area which is basically located in the, it is in the border of Noida in Delhi. So it is very close to the campus. So the women, especially the women, in spite of their age, in spite of their difficulties, they have came to the streets and they have blocked an highway that connects Delhi and Noida against the attack that happened in the campus and against the attack that happened in Al-Aqsa and Jamia Millia Islamia. So that protest went on. They started to sit in that protest site for almost every time in 24/7, in spite of keeping all the other chores apart, especially that the most warming thing is that especially it was the woman who especially the Muslim woman, we will tell that every time we were subjected to this particular kind of notion that Muslim women are suppressed under the sharia, suppressed under the scarf, but it was the same Muslim woman who came up to the street and they are protesting against the atrocities that happened across. So Sharjeel Imam was also someone who was closely associated with the Shaheen Bagh's emergence, so he got arrested on the January itself, and it's like the arrest happened afterwards. So afterwards, Shaheen Bagh that emerged in the northeast, in the Delhi, we can see that a number of other Shaheen Baghs that emerged in the different parts of India. Everywhere, literally, like I was fortunate to visit each and every word. So every place, everywhere, we have seen a lot of number of Shaheen Baghs that emerged, which was mainly dominated by women itself. They were speaking up for their right. They were speaking up against all the atrocities which they have been facing. And Shaheen Bagh became a model of resistance. And nowadays, we can see that the farmers' protest also, they have adopted a similar kind of thing in which blocking the highways and protesting by sitting there itself. I from all the observations which I have, that people came out to the street and they have started protesting by blocking the roads, because it was like it was only the option in front of them. There was no point in talking to the authorities. There was no point in going for appeals. There was no point in talking to the governmental authorities regarding all the difficulties which they have been facing. So it was at that particular moment the people started to come to the street and they started protesting at that particular moment. Like you might have, everyone have heard about how Shaheen Bagh became a symbol of a mode of protesting.
And it was a peaceful protest, completely peaceful protest. And it was also a compliant protest. The protest was, expressing your dissent is a constitutional right. And there's the right to gather, the right to protest. It's right there in the preamble of the Constitution. And as soon as COVID hit, and there were protocols for safety and social distancing, Shaheen Bagh, some people didn't even think they should, but the women decided that we must be compliant. We must not be a spreader. And one of those most moving moments was those images of the chappals. When the women couldn't be there, they just laid out footwear, chappals, to symbolize the protest, even when they were not there. So it really was, in my view, it was a Gandhian protest. It was completely brave. It was completely, putting their bodies on the line for what is right and what is legal. And it was peaceful. It was absolutely peaceful. About the solidarity, I was saying that from what I can see, there is, and Aisha, tell me if I'm right, there is solidarity between Muslim activists and movements, Dalits, the farmers today. There's the Sikh community because of the farming issue. There is solidarity among impacted communities, and certainly many of the people standing up in solidarity with the impacted communities are folks who are from the Hindu community. But the thing that I don't see is this little void that me and my colleagues are trying to fill, which is that people who identify openly as Hindu need to mobilize, because it is the majority community in India. And I'm a hopeful person. I take hope from all of these incredibly brave protests, for instance. And my hope is that a sizable proportion of the Hindu community is not happy with the secular democracy of India being destroyed. We love our country. We are patriots, and that patriotism means we want India to remain a secular nation and its constitution to be respected and for it to prevail. And we don't want India to become a Hindu Rashtra. And so my appeal is that anybody out there who is Hindu and identifies as Hindu, please add your voice as a Hindu. It is essential. I work in Afghanistan as well. And the same way that my colleagues in my organization, Women for Afghan Women, they're all Afghan Muslim men and women. They say Islam and Taliban are not the same thing. They are Muslims who stand against Muslim extremism. So they are my inspiration. And we need the Hindu version of them. Where are the Hindus who identify as Hindu, who stand against these monstrosities?
Sure. Both of you have given us a glimmer of hope where India might hopefully go with the coalition within the minorities. And as you put it down, Sunita, as well, hopefully the majority Hindus also joining in to save India's democracy, really. That's what we're talking about, in India's future as a pluralist nation. But just to go back before we finish, how do you think the international community can play a pivotal role in here? Before you answer that, just give an example that the BJP itself and the Hindutva has actually exported its ideology, and it's recruiting in Europe in particular. I can speak in Britain, that within British Parliament, that there are political lobbyists who's trying to promote that ideology. So how do we see the international community, whether they're Muslims or non-Muslims, who want democracy to succeed, who wants to see plurality and cohesions within community, how can they help from their countries to help India?
So being in the States, let me answer this. Yeah. The reason somebody shouted at me recently in India, actually, in a meeting where I was speaking about my work, and they said, and this was a Hindu name person born into a Hindu family, and he said, keep your Hinduism inside your house. Why are you bringing your Hinduism out into the streets? And I answered, I would much rather keep my Hinduism in my house. It's just that this complete aberration of Hinduism is in the streets. And I can't bear for this to be the Hinduism that is being expressed. And I feel I must bring my Hinduism, which is just love, into those streets so that that's not the only thing out there. And so this is the situation, not just in India, also in the States. And I have family and friends in Britain as well, also in Britain and in Australia. Basically, any space, I can tell you this from experience, any space, public space, social space, political space, educational space, schools, little balvihars for children, you name it. Any space where Hindus are has been overrun, dominated, entrenched with this Hindutva-aligned philosophy. And so our work as Hindus, the burden is on us because we let this happen by basically vacating that space. Hindus of conscience like me and hopefully so many others need to speak up in those spaces. And the hope is in the youth, because what I find is that the people who find my groups online and say, oh my God, thank goodness there's an alternative, they tend to be young. So my hope is that young people have the courage to speak up to their elders and say, no, we will not be a party to this hate. The other part of this, before I give back to Aisha, is that all of us should also understand that we are living in divided nations, whether it's UK, US, India. It's like there's two different realities and the two parts aren't talking, Hindutva and non-Hindutva. In this country, Trump supporters and non-Trump supporters. We have to figure out how to talk to each other. And it's hard to do, but it's the only way. Otherwise, the divisions will deepen. And one part of it is that if somebody shows up as a Hindu in a movement against Hindutva, what they're often met with is a kind of a suspicion and a lack of trust. I understand where that comes from, but I think all of us who are on the side of justice and reason should try and understand, first of all, why are Hindus up in arms? Why is this going on? Maybe some small part of it might be legitimate. Maybe, like in America, for instance, many of the people who voted for Trump are poor white people who are actually suffering. If you just call all of those people racist, you haven't really helped your democracy. I think we all have to try and figure out where we can connect from our hearts and from a sense of justice with each other. And that's the true meaning of democracy anyway. And so if Hindus are allowed, welcomed into movements of resistance, we will be such a stronger movement of resistance because Hindus are the majority. We need that. We won't get anywhere without Hindus. So that's my appeal to all of us, to hold hands with each other and focus on injustice and poverty as the uniting factor rather than our identities.
Sure. Aisha, you want to see how?
Yes. One thing which I wanted to add in that case is that being in the country as in India, they have only concerned with what the people outside or what the countries outside are thinking and what they are into actually. They are not even concerned about what the people of India is doing into. So the extending the solidarities, the sort of pressure that coming from the international organizations and agencies is helping us really a lot in order in the resistance against the government, against the BJP government itself, because they are only concerned about what the international agencies or what the international world is thinking about. They are not even concerned about the people inside. So I would like to put up very example of the Safura Zargar. She got arrested connecting with accusing for the one who was associated with the Northeast Delhi violence. But actually she was a member of the JCC, and when she got arrested, she was pregnant, and after that we have seen such a large number of the protests in order for claiming or in order for the release of Safura Zargar. In that thing, international agencies, international organizations played a huge and important role. It was due to their extensive pressure and extensive protest. Safura got an interim bail in between, so she is out, thankfully. So still now there are a number of other activists who are still inside the jails, accused of the wrong crime which they haven't even thought or done actually. So international, expecting the international organizations and international agencies to put more pressure upon the government, or put more pressure with the government to move back from all the anti-constitutional, anti-Muslim, anti-human things, or anti-human legislations, laws, and act, or the path which they have been taken into.
Absolutely. And you know, the anti-CAA protests and the farmers' protests have been echoed by large groups of people in spite of COVID across the world. And so, as somebody so far away from you, but my heart is with you, the international organizations, mine and so many others, we understand that we have the privilege of being able to speak openly and put pressure, and we are doing it, and you can count on it.
Both of you, thank you very much. And I think I'd like to also apologize to Aditya that we weren't able to join him because of the technical problems. But to our listeners, I think what we have heard today is quite concerning and worrying of the direction India is going. But we have a glimmer of hope here from several fronts. One is, of course, the fact that there is a coalition within India emerging that is trying to unite and counter the authoritarianism that is emerging from the government itself. In the international community, of course, there's lobbying groups and pressure groups that also have taken up the case of India. And this is where each and every one of us who's listening to this and watching this can play a part by distributing and becoming aware of what is happening in India and making sure that they create their own circle of concern, lobby their parliamentarians, the media, so that the issue is covered and kept in the limelight. But also, we all learned from America that when we had Trump in, there was so much concern. But finally, democracy saw that he was put out of his way. So we hope in India that through democratic means, BJP will be replaced by a better government, which will try and bring about a pluralist society. So both of you, Aisha and Sunitya, thank you very much for joining us. And to all our viewers, Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.